This is step-by-step guide, writing a lab report part 1. We are going to go through these 12 steps. First, choose a research question. 2, generate a causal model. 3, choose an experimental design. 4, simulate data. 5, prepare a data frame. 6, analyze data. 7, write in the introduction. 8, write in the methods. 9, write in the results. 10, writing the discussion. 11, creating the list of references. And 12, put everything together. We are going to go through these in detail in some of these steps, and other steps we are going to just mention briefly, and we are going to go through these topics during the semester, and we are going to revisit these steps when we acquire more knowledge that will allow us to provide more details in how to do each of these steps. Okay, step 1, choose a research question. So here you need to find a topic which is psychological that you're interested in and formulate a research question. So how do you find a topic you're interested in? Well, you may have an interest, but you may also do a literature review, and you do a literature review by going to databases. So one way is to use Google Scholar. So if you go to scholar.google.com, you get to this page, and then you can search by topic. So if you're interested in sleep disorders, you just type this, and then you get articles. When you have a link here, it means that the article is available. You've got a lot of articles in here, as you can see, 2 million articles here, 2.8 million articles, and a lot will be available, not all of them. If you are interested in a scale that measures sleep disorder, you do it that way. Now, so this Google Scholar is a very useful tool to find articles, but you can be a bit more specific, look at more traditional ways of finding articles, which is using databases. So if you go to the Murdoch library, you go to databases, and there are 2 databases that we use a lot in psychology. One is called Scopus. So you go to S, and then you find Scopus, which is here. Just press there, and then again there. And you can search there again by topic or by author. So if you want to search by topic, you use documents. If you want to search by author, you go to authors. So let's say topic, and we are interested in working memory. Search. And then you've got a list of articles here, and you go to find it at Murdoch, and you will have access to those articles. Another database that we can use is PsycInfo. So if you go to P, next one, PsycInfo, and you get there, and again you can search by topic or you can search by name. So again, if you're interested in reaction times, Then search. And you get articles. When you've got the Find It at Murdoch, you can access to those articles. Okay, so when you read some articles, you will choose 3 articles for the assignment, and based on those articles, you will formulate a research question, which is something that you want to find out, a hypothesis of what you will find. And the hypothesis in this assignment will take the form of a causal model. So let's return to the slides. Step 2, generate a causal model. We are going to explain causal models in week 2, so I'm not going to explain this in detail here, just show you in the assignment guide that this is how your psychological model or causal model or psychological causal model, sorry about that, looks like. So you've got one variable, which is the causal variable, a causal link, and the consequence variable there. So a lot more about this in week 2. So step 3. Choose an experimental design. And basically for this project is going to be an experimental design in which you've got 2 groups, and one group will be the experimental group and the other group will be the control group. And you will have to compare the performance, the dependent variable that you are going to measure in both groups, how that differs between these 2 groups. Again, we're going to talk about this later on in the unit. So at this stage, we're not going to say much about the experimental design. Step 4, simulate data. So for simulating data, I will provide an Excel file, which is this one, and which will have these characteristics. So you've got the participants column, the group column, dependent variable, and range of group low, range of group high. So this is what you will find in the spreadsheet that will be available soon. Now, the participants column has values from 1 to 100, and this will not change. So whatever is in blue here is not going to change. You don't have to make any modification here. The group variable is also something that you don't change. It's in blue, so you don't change it, and you have 2 values, 0 and 1. You can see that the first 50 participants have the value 0, and the rest of the participants have the value 1. That means the group 0 is 0 is a label for control group, and 1 is for experimental group. Now, the simulation happens here in the dependent variable. Now here you've got some numbers there, but these will change. Why they will change? Well, because you can see here that there is a formula, the rand between formula, that generates random numbers. So what numbers generates? Well, generates random numbers between the values D2 and E2. So D2 is this one, E2 is this one. So here Excel generates a random number between 10 and 20, which is 13. Now notice that you've got 13 there, no? Now I'm going to go to this cell or to any other cell, and I just press insert a number and press enter. You see that the number changed in there, and you change in all the other cells as well. So this will change all the time. If you're working with this spreadsheet, it will change all the time. So when you are happy with the numbers that you get, then you will have to stop making modifications and just keep those numbers. Okay. Now, those numbers are based on these values. So the green values you will change based on your study. Like, for example, one thing that is important that here, the control group has a range of values between 10 and 20 for all the participants, okay? And the experimental group has values between 18 and 28 for all the participants. So that's on purpose to generate a difference between these two groups. So the values that will be generated in the experimental group will be higher than the values that will be generated in the control group. So this is what you want in order to, for when you do the analysis, you get what we call a significant result. Okay, so what you are going to do is you're going to change these numbers based on the measurement you are going to carry out in your study. Let's say you are going to use the depression scale as your variable. Well, let's say the values, the possible values are between 0 and 30 in that particular depression scale. So what you have to do is that these values, range of group low and range of group high, are values that are within that range of possible values in your depression scale. How do you find the possible values? Well, you find them in the articles that you're going to read. In at least one of those articles, you have to have one way of measuring what you want to measure and possible values. You don't have to have exact values, but it have to be very similar to the one in the paper you're going to use. And what you have to do is that for your control group, provide ranges that are different to those in the experimental group. Okay, so if you expect that the experimental group will have a lower mean performance in this variable, then the values in the experimental group 1 should be lower than those in the control group. Okay, so you change those values accordingly. So in this case, let's say the depression scale has values, possible values between 0 and 30. So you put possible values between 10 and 20 for the experimental group, and possible values between 18 and 28 for the experimental group. So the maximum cannot be higher than the maximum in the scale, which is 30, and the minimum cannot be lower. Okay, so that's what you need to change for your assignment, and the values in this column will change accordingly, and so you don't have to do anything. Basically, then you will have these three values, the three columns that we are interested in. That one you have to dismiss for the presentation of the assignment. Next step is step 5, prepare a data frame. So we are going to do that, continue from there. We need to save this, but not as an Excel file, rather as a CSV file. How do you do that? Okay, so you go to File and Save As, and instead of saving as an Excel workbook, you save it as CSV. I just changed the name. Save. I tend to just go close that file and open it again as CSV. So here it is, the new CSV file. I open it. And you can see a couple of things there, and that all the colors disappear, values disappear when you transfer to CSV, the format disappears, and the formulas. So this now is not a formula, it's just a traditional value, and it won't change anymore. Okay, so for the assignment, you have to delete these two columns, and you just present these data frame. Step 6 is analyze data, and here just to let you know that you are going to use what is called a t-test, independent samples t-tests, and you are going to do that with JASP, but we are going to go through that later on in the unit. Step 7, writing the introduction. So I go to the assignment guide, and here is in the research report part, introduction explains the rationale of the study, including the psychological causal model. It states the hypothesis tested in the study. So basically the introduction is going to be a brief introduction. Remember that the research report only contains 750 words. So the introduction cannot be very, very long, but you have to present the problem based on the 3 articles that you are going to use for the report. You have to talk about the psychological model. The psychological model, remember, you present it separate, but you talk about the psychological model. And basically the hypothesis. You are going to say that the experimental group, you hypothesize that the experimental group will have a lower or a higher mean than that of the control group. Now, what especially is the experimental group? You have to change that in your hypothesis. Don't use experimental group. You have to give content to this. What is the experimental group? Which is what condition is the experimental group going to go through, which is different than the condition that the control group goes through. Okay, so basically that will be the introduction. The end of the introduction is the hypothesis. And then you start with method section, that it is our step 8, writing the methods. So methods contains the details necessary for another researcher to replicate the study. It includes the subsections participants, material, and procedure. Again, you have a 750 words report, which is very short and concise. So you shouldn't worry that you have to provide a lot of details. So what you need to provide is the number of participants, the material you use. So basically these are the variables that you're going to measure. Sorry, not the variables, the scales that you're going to use, or the task you're going to use to compare the performance in the control group and the experimental group. The procedure includes the way the study was conducted. You say that the study was conducted in a lab, or that the participants completed the task online, whatever you think is appropriate. And then you include the data analysis. If you want, you can add a subsection called data analysis, or you can include that in their procedures. And there you have to say that you use a t-test that compare the mean in the variable, in the dependent variable of the control group versus the experimental group. Okay, so our next step is writing the results. The results, in the results section, you present descriptive statistics using a graph, and the graph doesn't is not included in the word count. You need to present inferential statistics, which will be the independent samples t-test. And so basically you are going to report the t-test using the APA style way of reporting t-test results. You will have to present a p-value, whether the result is significant or not, and we are going to go through these later in the unit. Our next step is writing the discussion. And in discussion, you need to indicate whether the hypothesis was supported by the data or not, and relates the result of the present study with previous research. And it also discusses limitations of study and offers suggestions for future research. Again, you won't have much much space to write of all of this, so you do your best, but definitely you need to say in the discussion, the first thing you say is that was the hypothesis, the hypothesis was supported or was not supported by the data. That definitely has to be there, and whether this is in line with previous research or not, and if you have time, if you have space, you discuss the limitations of the study and offer suggestions for future research. Our next step is creating the list of references, and the list of references you're going to create based on these 3 articles, no more than 3, no less than 3. So choose those 3 articles, and you put a list of reference with these 3 articles. Importantly, you need to use the APA manual style, which is there is a version 7 now, so use that to present the references. And remember that in this assignment, the maximum is 750 words, and you must not write more than 750 words. The marker will stop reading after 750 words. So whatever you write more than that, it will not be marked. So you need to be concise and use 750 words to write the whole report. Step 12, putting everything. So what you have to do is to provide a first page in your assignment that has the causal model that's separated from the rest. Then a second part is the data frame, which you copy your Excel or your CSV file into a Word. So you just copy and paste and you get a table in Word. And after that, in a separate page, you start with a report. So basically that's it. That's all what you need to do for the research report.